Foreign trade facilitators.
International trade is based on the detailed study of the goods that regions have to exchange with each other. Whether similar or different goods, one of the advantages it offers is that it allows regions to specialize in producing products that provide them with a competitive advantage, which can be in terms of cost, quality, time, operational efficiency. Among others, trade between nations is a strategy that has been practiced since ancient civilizations, driven by the need to obtain inputs and/or products that were not locally available. Initially, spices, metals, food, and other items were exchanged. However, the advent of the Industrial Revolution enabled intercontinental connections through transportation means, and mass production facilitated product availability, the two main activities encompassed by international trade are exports and imports. Over time, nations started to take protectionist measures to avoid the entrance of merchandise that could affect local producers, which have higher production costs. Free commerce started its regulation in this manner, establishing barriers and tariffs to simulate fair competition between local and foreign providers in a country's market. Nowadays, nations develop resources and agreements among nations to get rid of these restrictions. Foreign trade looks for openings that benefit consumers by means of more purchase options and encourage producers to increase efficiency to compete with a quality product.
Sources of information and foreign trade resources.
Summary: countries develop programs and projects for their productive sectors to provide a suitable environment for the processes involved in the commercialization of goods, both for exports and imports. One of the main obstacles to international trade is the complexity of procedures and the required specialized knowledge in regulations, tariffs, and other areas. In response, the E-Trade Facilitation Agreement (TFA) was implemented in 2017. It establishes guidelines to expedite the movement, release, and clearance of goods, and promotes customs cooperation and technical assistance. This agreement has simplified documentation and optimized processes through automation, positively impacting foreign trade practices. Ode 2018, cited in Thorens 2020. In this context, the ORPIM project was launched in 2019. It aimed to strengthen the public policy competencies of member countries of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States (ILA) to encourage the internationalization of SMEs through global technological readiness. This initiative gave rise to the single window for foreign trade view. Project activities included training view, coordinating staff, and conducting surveys with delegates, coordinators, and customs agents from 18 countries to identify improvement areas, training needs, and document best practices for dissemination. Currently, the design, operation, and management of the single window for foreign trade depend on each country's legal framework, available resources, and specific needs, as there is no single model. However, its usefulness is widely agreed upon as a technological platform that integrates the documentation required for exporting, importing, and goods in transit. Furthermore, governments also establish institutions to facilitate, promote, and manage the strategic linkage between national producers and foreign customers. They design support mechanisms such as credits and programs that encourage internationalization, aiming to generate wealth from incoming foreign capital flows. This also stimulates employment and, consequently, the professionalization of the workforce resulting from trade exchanges. Regarding New Mexico's producers have access to a significant amount of specialized information generated by government units focused on foreign trade. For example, the Undersecretariat of Foreign Trade is responsible for formulating policies, conducting negotiations, and managing and defending international trade agreements and treaties. According to the Secretariat of Economy (SE), 2020, Mexico actively participates in multilateral trade negotiations within the frameworks of the World Trade Organization (WTO), the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation (APEC) Forum, and the Latin American Integration Association (LATIC). The Secretariat of Economy is the institution that takes over the regulation and promotion of foreign trade in this country. in compliance with the economic policy established by the government among its actions to promote internationalization. It has created a few foreign trade promotion programs to bestow benefits on Mexican companies, allowing them to successfully place their products and services internationally. The following are the programs mentioned: manufacturing, Maquila and Export Services Industry MX, by its initialism in Spanish. Import tax refund for exporters drawback, foreign trade enterprises EX, by its initialism in Spanish. Highly exporting enterprises ALTEX, by its initialism in Spanish. Sectorial promotion programs PROS, by its initialism in Spanish. These programs were designed to promote different branches of the country's international trade, or rather diverse company profiles of varying sizes, functions, and objectives, with the purpose of supporting the greatest number of companies possible. The correct implementation of these foreign trade promotion programs has a positive effect on the country's competitivity, which in turn positively attracts foreign investment.
Organizations and institutions for international trade.
Global cooperation in terms of foreign trade started after the Second World War. It was called the International Trade Organization (ITO) and was created with the purpose of securing free trade among nations, by means of reducing business barriers. When the agreement to establish the organization under United Nations guidelines was not accepted by some countries, desisting in funding the International Trade Organization was necessary in 1950. Instead, nations agreed to cooperate by a much more informal agreement titled General Agreements in Tariffs and Trade (GATT), which established a multilateral forum to discuss reducing foreign trade barriers throughout participating countries. The most important GATT element to emphasize was the concept of the most favored nation, which stated that if a country had a certain preferential tariff treatment regarding a country, those tariffs were automatically applied to every country that signed the treaty. In 1995, the World Trade Organization (WTO) was established, responsible for operating and managing the regulations governing trade between nations. It generally oversees the agreements and/or contracts that countries establish concerning the exchange of goods, both tangible and intangible, and ensures compliance with policies seeking mutual benefit. Some other world-class institutions are the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, which regulate monetary flow between countries. Each nation establishes which institutions are in charge of foreign trade operations. According to its own executive and legislative structures, these agencies have the duty to state the laws that set regulations over each private party's international activity, in addition to carrying out these legislations, always aiming to maintain a balance between the statutes developed by international institutions and units and each country's authority.
Organization among nations and foreign trade facilitators.
The creation of the World Trade Organization brought about a tendency to form multilateral trade blocs when engaging in international activities. These nations determined that regulations were stable enough to create associations with other nations to promote competitiveness in the face of globalization. According to the Organización Mundial del Comercio 2024, as of May 1, 2024, there were 371 active regional trade agreements registered. To ensure transparency of these treaties, there is a committee responsible for reviewing and validating regional trade agreements according to the applicable regulatory framework. Depending on the integration level between nations, the following regional trade agreements are set.